Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the intermediate level of the Bitunix trading course. Today, we're going to take a look at something which is very specific to futures contract trading in crypto, which is right here on the upper right side of the dashboard, which is the funding rate slash countdown. Now, this is something that is only in futures trading. So you do not have this in regular spot trading. And this is because it is made to balance out the market in crypto derivatives. So here, this funding rate that you see here is something that you will either have to pay or you can also get paid and make profit from it. But it depends on the number and it depends on if you're short or long. And we're going to explain that in just a second. We also have a countdown here. Now, normally, the regular countdown is every 8 hours, which means, for example, for here, Bitcoin, ETH, most major coins, usually it's every 8 hours is when the funding rate hits, and that means it's 3 times a day. Now, there are some coins out there, for example, smaller coins, like I'll show you an example of one, BLZ, where the funding rate is every 4 hours, okay? It depends on how often it's needed to balance out the market. But what you have to know is that this is not a fee that Bitunix is charging you. This is on every single crypto derivatives exchange, okay? It's necessary to balance the price, stabilize the market. So this is something that must be done for futures contracts to run smoothly. And as such, it is not a fee that the exchange charges you, but instead a balancing mechanism between people who are long or short. So you can go ahead and hover over it and you'll get the description here, including the latest funding settlement rate. But if we go ahead and read the description, we can see that positive funding rates, which in this example of Bitcoin, we are in the positive because it's 0.013. Sometimes you have negative funding rates, which will be seen here with a negative symbol right before the number. In most cases, for most cryptos, they usually tend to be in the positives, but depending on the market conditions, if there's more shorts than longs, then the funding rate will actually turn negative. So if we go ahead and read again, positive funding rates result in payments from long positions to short positions, while negative funding rates result in payments from short positions to long positions. So in the case of our example with BTC here, the funding rate is positive, which means that in 5 hours and 35 minutes, since a bit of time has gone down since that last 8 hour ago funding rate, okay, we are going to get hit with this funding rate. Now, as we reviewed in the description here, if it is positive, that means that longs have to pay shorts. So for example here, I have a Bitcoin short position on 9x leverage. In this case, where I'm actually already in the profit in this position, I will actually get paid the funding rate. And not only that, I'm going to get it paid 3 times a day if I keep holding my position open. And I'm going to multiply the funding rate by my 9x leverage, which means that I'm going to be getting paid over 0.09% every time the funding rate hits 3 times a day. So take that approximate 0.09%, times it by 3. I'm going to be getting paid somewhere around 0.3% per day. Now keep in mind, the funding rate always changes. So keep an eye, especially when a new funding rate hits and right before you're about to get hit with the funding rate, because that's going to affect how much you're going to get paid or that you're going to have to pay. Now, if I was in a long position on this Bitcoin trade, instead of being short, and I kept my 9x leverage, then in that case, I would actually have to pay that amount to shorts. So that means that I would take this amount, multiply it by my time 9x leverage on long, and then it would be about 0.09%, times it by 3 again. If I was holding that, for example, for a full 24 hours and getting hit with 3 funding rates, I would actually have to pay that amount of around 0.3% in those 3 batches each time every 8 hours. So separately, 0.09, 0.09, and then the other one, 2 shorts. Okay, so it is the exchange just is not even a middleman here, right? This is purely a metric between longs and shorts so that the market is balanced and that things don't go out of control, and to keep the price accurate to where it's supposed to be, right? Based on the mark price and the index price. So this is something that can benefit you if you need it to benefit you, right? Some people only trade funding fees, right? They want to get in right before the funding rate hits, then they get paid that fee, for example, and then they exit. Some people are long, they're making a bunch of money longing Bitcoin when Bitcoin is pumping, so they don't even care if they have to pay the funding rates. So now you get a better idea of how, it's not a bad thing. And it's something that can benefit you. It's also something that if the funding rate gets really high, you need to be careful of, right? You might have to exit your futures trade or manage it appropriately, because that is something that can affect your trade quite a bit. But it's also something that can be completely irrelevant to you, right? If the funding rate is very small, you might also be on lower leverage, like 5x, 2x. And at that point, right, this small funding rate that you may have to pay, or maybe you'll get it paid, right? It's just like a nice little bonus. But let's say you're long, right? You have to pay this 0.013, and let's say you're on 3x leverage. That's a pretty small amount. And even if it's 3 times a day, but Bitcoin, goes up in a week 10%, right? And you're on 3x leverage, you're going to make 30%, and you'll have paid almost nothing in funding rates. So when you close out your position, it's going to be almost indistinguishable, okay? So it really depends on the situation, how much leverage you're using, et cetera, right? So keep that in mind now that you understood the basics. The last thing that I wanted to explain is, how do you pay this funding rate, or how is the funding rate paid to you? It's very simple. The funding rate is directly taken out or put into your margin balance here on your specific trades. So for example, here for Solana, I have $75.81. Let's say the amount of the funding rate times the leverage, et cetera, would pay me out $1. Then I would actually see that when the funding rate gets hit and clears in just a matter of seconds, I would actually have an additional $1 here that would turn into 76.81. In the case that I would have to pay that dollar based on the math, I would see after the funding rate hits every 8 hours, $74.81. Okay, there's also a couple extra places where you can get more details about the specific futures contract and the funding rate. One is down here, but also if we go over to market info, okay, and we click this button here, you're going to see more details on the exact futures derivative contracts here for a bunch of cryptos, ETH, BTC, whatever you want to take a look at. So for example here, for BTC, you can come down to funding rate settled at, and it'll show you the exact times, right? I said 3 times a day, every 8 hours. You can double check here. That's correct, exactly as I explained. And if we go ahead and look at some other cryptos, right, smaller altcoins, for example, typically, now there's not a bunch of coins on Bitunix that have funding rates that are not every 8 hours, but there are a couple. And here you can see, for example, BLZ, okay? BLZ has a funding rate every 4 hours. So it's an additional place to check just if you want to make sure. And once again, to check that, all you have to go is go up to the far right corner, click market info right above the order submission, and that will bring you to the page where you can see more details on the exact contract you're trading, and specifically details about the funding rate. Thank you so much for watching this video about the funding rate, which is something that can make you a lot of money, but something that you also have to watch out for and manage properly to make sure that you can get max profit out of your trades, and to watch out for in case the funding rate is extreme. Now, when the funding rate is very high, which for example, they can go up to 0.5, 1% in extreme times when a bunch of people are longing or a bunch of people are shorting, keep in mind this funding rate can turn positive or negative, or can even be flat in very rare circumstances. Well, when the funding rate is very high, let's say at 1, for example, okay, and you're on 10x leverage, that means you're getting paid, or might have to pay 10% every 8 hours in the example of Bitcoin. Okay, so that could make you huge profits. For example, if you're on $1,000 trade and you're getting paid 10% every 8 hours, that would make you $300 just waiting 24 hours. But at the flip side, right, it can also cost you a lot of money if you're needing to pay that funding rate. So this was my overview on funding rates and the countdown timer. This is specific to futures trading. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all very soon.